Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody on our Cardinal Strong Wellness Series. This is our 11th event and the 6th event for Dr. Andreas Stamatis. So this evening, he is going to present his final segment of his psychological skills training that many of you have been involved with since the beginning. I just want to say, personally, this is, I think, a fantastic experience and opportunity for our student athletes, and so appreciative of Andreas for taking a huge amount of his time to dedicate to you guys as student athletes to share his expertise and knowledge in this area. So I hope you all appreciate and have picked up some things from Andreas, and moving forward, I'm just going to let Andreas take it off, start with his presentation. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, guys. We made it. It's the final webinar. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen, which I cannot. Lisa has to let me, if she would like, because I cannot share. But yeah, this is the 6th webinar, and it's been 5 months. We started in December and it's April. So it's funny how, you know, Lisa contacted me and we were talking about 1, and then we ended up with 6, and here we are. So it's been an honor, and if I could, if I helped just a little bit, even one of you, that would be great. I know a couple of students have already reached out and they want specific feedback for the specific issues. So that makes me happy. It means it's kind of working, and the data that you're submitting shows that it's kind of working as well. So that does make me happy. All right, I can share my screen now. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So yeah, the sixth session today, and what we're gonna do is pretty much go over everything we covered so far. So we're gonna do PST, what is psychological skills training, and then really quickly hit the major points about all 8 key dimensions of mental toughness. Again, always start with this. So as I said, we started 5 months ago in December, and here we are with our second in April. So today, concerning data collection at the very end, nothing in the beginning, you are going to do demographics and then 3 questionnaires, 1 for PST, 1 for mental toughness, and 1 for mental health. So I will start by, as I said, going over what is PST and everything that we have covered about mental toughness. And then at the very end, Lisa is gonna put the link in the chat room. Again, you have to use your code, first letter of first name, 4 last digits of your cell phone number, and first letter of last name. So Andreas, A for me, 3477, the 4 last digits of my cell phone, and S for Stamatis, first letter of last name. So that's your code. Keep using the same thing. Again, demographics, if you haven't submitted them before, submit them now. If you do all 4 demographics, PST, MT, and MH, it will take you approximately 9 minutes. One last thing, before you start, it will ask you to agree concerning the consent form. So you have to do that, otherwise you won't be able to participate. And I really would like you to do the whole thing at the very end. This is our last assessment, and would love to see the results of all this that we've been doing for the past 5 months. So let's start with psychological skills training, and I'm gonna do the first one, and then Lisa is gonna help me a little bit, maybe Tanya or any other volunteers, assuming Lisa and Tanya can be considered volunteers. So psychological skills training, what is it? It's a systematic and consistent practice of mental skills that has been proven that leads to positive effects on performance, and that's why we're doing this, right? How much do we do, and what's the frequency and the duration? 10 to 15 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days per week. That's a general kind of rule. We prove that it's very helpful, but we also showed that not a lot of people use it. So why do we see that? Well, a lot of people don't really know how beneficial it is. And also a lot of people don't have the knowledge to do it or the time to do it. For however time the athlete is participating in sports, the PST should be a part of his or her training. For best results, of course, off season is best or better or preferred because we have simply put more time. The connection between the psychologist or the mental coach with the other coaches and the athlete is really important. So we have to take advantage of any kind of meeting. So for me, if I'm invited in practice, I go. If I'm invited during film, I go. Anytime I can create some rapport with the team, I'm taking advantage of it. Okay, if I can travel, I'll travel, and I'll talk with the athletes in the bus or on the plane. There are 3 phases of PST. In the very beginning, we have to educate the athlete about what it is and how important it is and how beneficial it can be. And then we go into the second phase, which is the acquisition of the specific skills for the specific athletes and for the specific issues they may have. And then the athlete needs to practice. So they practice in the office, they practice at home, they practice during practice, and they do a lot of simulations, and eventually they practice during actual games. Okay. Now, the ultimate goal of PST is very similar to the goal of any coach. So when you're coaching somebody, your goal is your trainee at some point does not need you anymore. They can do it by themselves. They learned enough and they are independent. So that's the same thing for us. We need you to be able to regulate yourself eventually, right? And there are 5 steps. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. I have one more slide about PST. The last thing I want to say before I go to those 5 steps, 5 phases of PST, is that we have issues with implementation, and those happen because people don't believe in it. There's no time. A lot of times the mental coach or the psychologist does not know enough about the actual sport. And lastly, we have a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning, but we forget about it and there's no follow-up, so we're not really evaluating what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead now and talk about this figure, right? We talked about this figure before, the 5 stages of self-regulation. And I don't know if you remember in that very first session webinar, we talked about Jim, and Jim was a really good player, really high percentage in free throws. Of course, this is a scenario, right? It's not real. And Jim had to go to the free throw line, 2 shots, 2 free throws. If he could make both of them, they would win the championship. He missed both of them. So in our example, although he was a great athlete and with a very high percentage as a basketball player, he missed both. So the very first stage, the very first step, and that's very important because you see the sequence, there's stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cannot go to 2 if you don't pass first through 1, right? So Jim has to recognize that inability to hit those shots in crucial moments. That's very important. Okay, that's stage 1. Stage 2 now, after that, Jim has to commit to fix the issue, no matter how easy or difficult it is. Step 3, he has to actually execute whatever he needs to do, and especially he turns into the inside. You see, he self-evaluates, he self-monitors, he self-reinforces. So the whole goal is to cope with stress, especially under pressure, but that's an internal process that Jim has to really work with himself. Once that's done, he's moving to the 4th stage, which is looking outside to the environment. So maybe 30 minutes of a power nap before the game or the practice helped. Maybe if he listens to his favorite music in the locker room helps. So whatever he thinks that may affect him negatively, he takes it away and he adds things in his environment that help him. And at the very end, Jim now can actually fix his problem, right? He has already fixed his problem. And not only during practice, but also games, and then more games, and then more games. And eventually he takes that skill and he transfers it in the other aspects of his life. Okay, and those are the 5 stages of self-regulation. That's really important. That's why I wanted to go over this slide again. So we're done with PST, and now we use the example of mental toughness to show how we can do PST that can help performance. This is the definition, right? The personal capacity, subjective and objective performance, okay? And also, as you can see, adversity, okay? Despite adversity. The operational definition, state-like means that it can be developed, and that's important for us because it means we can create interventions, right? And that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to increase mental toughness. Also, as we've seen before, there are these 8 key components, right? That all of them have some characteristics that come together, assimilate, and create that thing at the very bottom that's called mental toughness. What's the common ground between all these 8? Well, the common ground is that they are purposeful. So they give you intention and they give you direction towards those goals that you have. They're also efficient, which means that there is congruent between the goal and the behavior towards the goal. And also all of them are flexible. So if something happens, there's a high degree of flexibility so you can adjust. So all 8 of them, and we covered all of them 2 by 2, right? Assimilate over time, and they create one thing, which is called, again, mental toughness. All right, now, I'm not going to go over that because we're going to cover this one by one. That's a slide. I'm going to share my presentation again. So those are all the definitions about the 8 key dimensions, right? And we're going to explain, we're going to go over again one by one as we've done in the past. All right, we're going to start with optimistic start. We're going to keep the same sequence we had as we went through these webinars. So I hope you remember Liam. Liam was a hockey player. So here, what we did is we used explanatory style, right? And the 3 Ps, if you remember, personal, permanent, pervasive. And we tried to block that negative self-talk that Liam had whenever he would not deliver, okay? So an optimistic Liam would say, wouldn't take it personally and would say the past wasn't that good, so it wasn't my fault. Wouldn't think it's permanent, I'll get it next time. So not the whole game is gonna suck because I just missed one opportunity. And then he wouldn't think that, let's say he had a bad game, that would transfer to his whole day. Or even if he was a bad hockey player today, that means he would be a bad student. So he would block that thought saying that I'm still a great son, because you remember the case with Liam was that he was really close to his father. So an optimistic Liam would use these 3 phrases to block negative self-talk, but you can also see what a pessimist Liam would do, right? I'm responsible, I'm never gonna be enough, I'm bad at school too today, I'm gonna be bad at school. So this is an example again to explain, yes, to break down the explanatory style and the 3 Ps, okay? I'm gonna do the first one and then I'm gonna ask Lisa to do the other one. So these are the take home for optimism. What is it? It's a tendency to expect positive events in the future and attribute positive causes and outcomes to different events in one's life. Optimism is a strategy to filter the world and what's going on, right? And it is something that we can learn. And that's why we're here. Why is it important? We showed that optimists lead healthier lives, have higher motivation, and are more successful, which we're really interested in. We talked about the explanatory style, the 3 Ps, and it is what differentiates the optimist from the pessimist. So what I want to say again here is, if you have some negative self-talk, it's most likely not grounded. It shouldn't exist. Dispute it. Dispute your negative self-talk every day and every time. For the most part, it shouldn't be there. It's not true. Okay, that is proven. So dispute it and use the 3 Ps to filter the world differently, because things will happen. We can avoid that. What we can avoid, or what we can do, is how we filter them. Okay. And the last thing about optimism is that there is such thing as being over optimistic. So you should be optimistic, but also be proactive as well. Do the work. So sleep before the game, eat well, prep all week, do the massages, do all the whatever you do for recovery. So do everything you need to do before the game, and then go to the game and be optimistic. Okay, just not show up and think that things will happen because. Okay, it doesn't work like that. It works after you've done all the work. All right, and that's optimism. So let's move to emotion regulation. So here, what we care about is emotion regulation. So emotion is under affect, the umbrella of affect, which is again how we differentiate bad from good. So stress, when we talk about stress, we usually, the mechanism, the defense mechanism is called coping. Emotion is emotion regulation, and mood is mood regulation. We stopped here and we differentiate, we made clear that mood is not emotion. Mood is something more permanent. Mood comes from the inside. We don't really know when it started. We don't really know what caused it, right? Emotion is usually coming from somewhere outside, from the external environment. We know when it started, it picks, and then it just leaves us alone for some reason. So it's more intense, but the duration is always also shorter. Okay, so here we're talking about emotion. We're not talking about moods. And that's another slide I created. We've covered a lot of information that night. I remember that. So when we're talking about emotional responding, right? You see up there the blue dots and the blue arrow. We're talking about a situation that has importance to you, right? Something about the sport you're playing. So something happens and it draws your attention. Once it draws your attention, then you need to filter the situation. You need to appraise what happened. And based on that appraisal, you respond. That response goes back and affects the situation. So this whole thing is dynamic. And why I included that is to tell you that the way you appraise and respond will affect the situation, which again will affect your attention and so on and so forth. So in a way, we have the power to affect the situation enough, or a certain amount. Okay, so be careful with the fourth and the fifth, so the appraisal and the response. Now, when we talk about the regulation process model, we can be proactive. So one is situation selection. So if you know that something will really affect your emotions negatively, don't put yourself there. Be proactive. So if you know that before the game, if you talk to your friend and he or she is usually kind of negative and that will affect your emotions, don't do it. Put yourself in a better situation, in a non-toxic environment, right? Number two is a situation modification. So something happened. If you can really react, but really, really fast before something happens. And I use the example when we went over this about it's a snowy day, your car doesn't start, you're going to be late for the game, but then your roommate intervenes and she drives you or he drives you to practice or to the game. We just saved the whole thing immediately because we had that really fast reaction and that didn't really affect your emotions. Attentional deployment. Something happens. Try to focus on the things that are important and relevant. And we're going to talk about attention regulation in a little bit. So you're going for that free throw. Where do you want to focus your attention? What is relevant? What is important? The cognitive change. Use whatever happens in a way that it is productive. You can say, yes, that loss really taught us a lot. That is a cognitive change. So that really affects your emotion. And the last one is at the very end of something that will happen. Something that has to do with adversity, of course. And it's how you react at the very, very end. Some people eat. Some people drink. Some people use drugs, right? To regulate those emotions. What are you going? Some people go for a run. Some people just snap. right? So what is going to be that final reaction in that process to regulate your emotions? All right. Lisa, would you like to help me, please?
Sure. You want me to just read the take-home points?
Yes, please.
Okay, take-home points, emotion regulation. Self-regulation of affected states is related to overall life satisfaction, human social interaction, and global happiness. Emotion is not mood or stress. Sometimes emotions can and should be regulated. Emotional response process, you have a situation, attention, appraisal, response, situation. For goals of emotion regulation, you want to decrease negative, increase positive, decrease positive, or increase negative emotions. 5 strategies to develop a flexible and skillful emotional response. 1, situation selection. 2, situation modification. 3, attentional deployment. 4, cognitive change. And 5, response modulation.
Thanks, Lisa. One more comment to make here. Usually when we talk about emotion regulation, and we cover that, is we are trying to decrease negative or increase positive. But there are cases that we need to decrease positive or increase negative. So, and I gave the example, if you are laughing during a funeral, right, and you shouldn't, then the emotion regulation there is about decreasing the positive. Okay, so sometimes we need to decrease positive or increase negative emotions. That's my last comment about this, and then we'll move to attention regulation. All right, so here again, we use so many theories and there's so much information that I try to put in those presentations. So here, when we use self-control strength, that's the attention regulation we're going to talk about. And we're trying to show which are the moderators that attention control goes through in order to affect performance in a positive way. So the more attention I have towards a task, the more motivation I have, the better performance I have. So task motivation is one. The second one, the more attention, the more I can control my attention, the more I can monitor the task intentionally to see if I'm doing well or not and correct the errors. By doing that, then my performance is of higher quality. And the last one has to do with activating parts of our brain. And we went over this. I just don't want to go into a lot of details right now in sports neuroscience, but the more attention control I have, the more I can activate specific regions of my brain, which really affects my performance in a positive way. So that was one way for us to prove that attention regulation is important. Another thing that we use here was executive functioning, right? And executive functioning here was presented through these 4 steps that have to do with problem solving. So in the very beginning, we need to understand the problem and also find possible solutions. The second step is to identify the best solution out of whatever and plan how we're going to execute it. The third one is the actual execution, and it is divided into 2 parts. The intention, so which is actually trying to reach the goal, like intending to do it, and the real use is to actually do it. And the last one is evaluation, which is again broken down into 2 parts, and we have the error detection and the error correction. So in the first we are intentionally looking to detect errors so we can fix them and we can solve the problem better. So in this case, as we're going to see in the take-home points that somebody hopefully will help me by reading them. I don't want to call out anybody, but I mean, if you are the coach of the women's soccer team, that would be helpful. And so here, attention is really important, at least in the problem representation, because the more attention you have, the more you can represent the problem. In the intention of the execution, the more attention you put there, the more intention you have towards those goals. And definitely during evaluation, and especially during error detection, because again, the more attention you pay, the more errors you can detect so you can fix them and correct them. So who would like to help me out?
I could do it, Andres.
Thank you, Tanya. That was great. I wasn't expecting it.
And I thought, you know, if anything, I would select someone on my team, but then I spared them. So,
now.
take-home points, attention regulation. Attention regulation is the ability to focus on what is relevant while minimizing the intrusion of irrelevant information. Attention regulation is crucial in terms of willpower and optimal functioning and performance. Attention regulation is linked to task motivation. The depletion of one's ability to control attention in sport is problematic to upcoming performance. Attention is linked to executive function. Problem solving spans 4 phases. They are representation, planning, execution, and evaluation. When the aspects of executive function are integrated temporally and functionally through problem solving, attention is an integral part of at least representation, execution, and evaluation.
Thank you. Thank you. One more comment here about attention is that there's a thing as depletion. So the more you focus on one thing and for more time, the higher the probability of depletion. Okay, just have that in mind. So that resource is not unlimited. Okay, all right. So we're done with that, and we're moving to the fourth one, buoyancy. Okay, so buoyancy is, I created this slide to compare it with resilience. So buoyancy is for those, it's called everyday resilience, right? So it's more for those everyday events, while resilience is more for those irregular events, okay? So let's say not doing very well in drill, that will be buoyancy. Resilience would be, you have to face something really irregular. Let's say your Achilles was ruptured. That's irregular, right? We're talking about, as you can see, major adversity in resilience compared to minor adversity in buoyancy. Most people, though, need buoyancy because, again, those are everyday life events that everybody will face more. Resilience is used by less people, fewer people. And so when we talk about overcoming adversity, buoyancy could be like the front line, while resiliency could be the back line, okay? And who would like to help me now? Anybody?
Anybody on my team? Are you up for it? Want to read this?
I can.
Thank you.
Kirsten, love it.
Do you want me to just read this?
Yes, please.
Take-home points, buoyancy. Buoyancy is the ability to effectively execute the required skills. Hold on, you guys are blocking me. And processes in response to the challenges and pressures of everyday life. Buoyancy is everyday resilience. Buoyancy is a necessary but not sufficient condition for resilience. The more minor adversities we face successfully now, the fewer major events we will have to take later. Resilience. Being proactive and positively oriented may be an ideal approach against adversity. Use leading and lagging indicators for acquiring more explanatory power against adversity.
Thanks, Kirsten, I appreciate it. 2 comments. What is important for us to understand here is that by being proactive in facing those minor adversities before they become major adversities, so using buoyancy before we have or we need to use resilience may be something that can be really helpful for all of us against adversity. So if you know there's an issue, don't wait until it's a major issue. Try to face it today, tomorrow, when it's still more manageable, right? So try to use buoyancy more than resilience when that's possible, right? And the leading and lagging indicators, it's fine. I'm not going to go over that. Just, I guess the most important thing is to remember from here is by being proactive through buoyancy, you can really affect how much of resilience you would need in the future. Okay, so if you need to face something today, and you can, do it. All right, don't wait until it's a major thing. All right, success mindset. Here we explain success mindset through grit, the first one. So what we did here is grit is more about long-term effort towards usually one goal. Okay, so it's some kind of a long-term perseverance towards one goal. So here what we said is, okay, if achievement is really, it really depends on two things, which are talent and effort. Which one we cannot really control? Talent, right? You either have it or you don't have it. However, what you can control, what we can control is effort. So here in effort we can break it down into intensity. That is something that we can easily detect, easily see. Let's say at the weight room, you can see somebody just killing it, going really hard, right? What we cannot really detect very easily is for how long they've been doing this and how many goals they have. So the direction and the duration, and that's grit. Okay, grit wants to tell us that the name of the game is stamina. The name of the game is how long you're putting all this effort and for how many goals. So if there's just one goal and you keep pursuing, that will really distinguish you or your success compared to somebody else who's not doing it for that long or who has 15 goals. All right. Another way that we use to explain success mindset is hope theory. So we said here that we have the will and the ways. The will is the agency and the ways are the pathways. They are interrelated, both important, different. We need both for hope, but in terms of success mindset, what we need here is the agency, so the will. And what we do know, and that's important, that's why we use the hope theory to explain this, is that people with higher scores of hope, with higher levels of hope, have more goals, have higher, more challenging goals, and they usually have, on average, more success. So hope is directly related to success. So who would like to help me now? Anybody? It's not that difficult. I know you love my accent, just for a change. If somebody else would like to help, I'll be great. I'll do it. Okay. So grit is perseverance and passion for long-term goals. Grit is best exemplified by the importance of working longer without switching objectives. Grit is operationally defined as direction and duration of effort towards achieving one goal. Grit is shifting the focus of interest in success from working harder, that's important, to also working longer and on the same objective. Okay, that is really important. So it shifts the focus on just work hard. Work hard is important, but also work longer and on one objective is equally important. Grit is a better predictor of success than IQ, and we explained that when we went over grit. And now success mindset is the desire to achieve success and the ability to act upon this motive. Hope is associated with higher performance. Hope equals agency, the goal-directed determination, the will, plus pathways, which is planning of ways to meet the goals, which are the ways, and agency is crucial in explaining success mindset. We're going to use hope theory as we move to the next one, because now we said that will is important. Well, we're going to use the pathways in just a little bit. All right, so what's next? Context knowledge. So do you need to know the environment? Do you need the context that you are operating in? Let's see. So here, we're going to use hope theory again, but now the pathways are important, right? And the pathways are important because you need to know the ways to do it. So the way to achieve your goal is really affected by the environment. What do we know again? That people with higher hope find more ways to achieve their goals, which really affects their success, okay? All right, so what do we also use? I remember that night we used so much information, so I want to thank the people who logged on that night. That was a lot, probably, to digest. So here we use the balance theory of wisdom, okay? And mainly we focused on those red boxes. So here, what's important, at least for tonight, to remind you is that wisdom is about balancing. So it's first of all balancing our own interests, which is the intrapersonal, with the interests of others, which is the interpersonal, and with aspects of the context in which we exist, which is the extrapersonal. For example, our team or our program, athletic program. Okay, it's also about balancing our responses to the environment, the other red big box, right? Trying to change ourselves to make us more compatible to the environment. That's the adapting. Okay, think about your team. With changing the environment so it's a better fit for us, that's shaping. With choosing new environments, choosing a different team, right? And that's the selection. So wisdom theory again exemplifies context knowledge. And one last thing we used that night was performance intelligence, and more specifically the superior performance intelligence, SPI. And SPI is a new theory. It's trying to explain why several talented, hardworking, lucky, high performers cannot sustain success. And from this theory, what we use to prove that context knowledge is important is the second component, knowing how to work within your environment, and the second subcomponent of the third component, so delivery. So let's talk about knowing how to work with your environment. So that is related to people's ability to change the environment and use it in order to benefit from it. So knowing your environment is about being aware of the performance environment. And you can see, I don't know if you remember, but it had two subcomponents. One was knowing your controllable environment. And guess what's the other one? Knowing your uncontrollable environment, right? So the second one, shaping your environment, is about developing the performance environment that will deliver sustained success. And here we had 5 subcomponents: defining and communicating the vision and goals, surrounding yourself with the right people, fostering collaboration, challenging orthodoxy, and using your emotional intelligence. And the last one, being in tune with your environment. So that was about the daily communication and involvement with the performance environment. And here we had being agile, building and maintaining relationships, and staying humble. And the last one was delivering, from the third component of performance. And that had to do with, that praise is pretty much the careful preparation as a means to deliver sustainable high performance. And here we had 5 subcomponents: performing under pressure, trusting yourself, controlling the critical controllables, seizing opportunities, and the last one, knowing when to alter the course. So here we have context knowledge. I'm going to go for it. Context knowledge is defined as an awareness and understanding of the performance context and how to apply this knowledge in achieving success or reaching one's goals. Context knowledge and success mindset are related but separate. Context knowledge equals the wills and the ways. The ways are highly related to the context knowledge. Wise people are striving to be aware of the environment in which they need to apply their knowledge. And superior performance intelligence is about helping athletes getting to the top, but also stay there. All right, 2 more, right? Okay, generalized self-efficacy, which those are the ones we covered 2 weeks ago. So here, 4 sources of self-efficacy. 1, self-efficacy is your belief of your own abilities, okay? Or your own belief of your abilities, a better put. So success increases our belief of our own abilities. Okay, so the more success we have, the more self-efficacy, the more losses we have, the less self-efficacy. Vicarious experience, so living through others. Okay, so here, if you are seeing somebody who's very similar to you doing something, that makes you think that probably you can do it as well. Social persuasion is that verbal persuasion that maybe your coach did during halftime, right? If done properly and under the right timing, the right conditions, it will increase your self-efficacy, okay? And the last one is affective and physiological states. So here, what we're trying to say is that, let's say you're playing an important game and you feel that arousal, the person who has high self-efficacy will consider that high level of arousal as something positive, something that will help them perform. All right, and then the mediators of self-efficacy. The more self-efficacy I have, the more I'm going to think I can do it. The more self-efficacy I have, the higher motivation I will have that I can do it. The more efficacy I can have, the more I will believe that I will perceive stress, for example, during a game in a more positive way. And the more self-efficacy I have, the more challenging environments I will select. For example, choosing to join a team that will challenge you more than something easier, okay? All right, and that was about self-efficacy. And also we said this, I'll just cover it really quickly, and this has to do with how it changes throughout the lifespan. We talked about when we are like a newborn, doesn't have an identity, and then you compare yourself to your peers. If that goes well, of course, that increases your self-efficacy. Family is really important. And one thing we said there is do not compare yourself if you have older siblings, because they are on a different level. Adolescence is really important, of course, and there what we should remember is that yes, the more independence, the more risky behavior. However, we should not try to protect our kids by not letting them go out and face adversity. That's not the solution. The solution is to help them develop the skills to be able to overcome adversity, okay? School is really important as well. One thing that we need to remember about school is that teachers have the opportunity to help creating those skills, but the comparison should not be made between students. The comparison is healthier if it is being done between the same student, okay? If you are getting better compared to you last month, not if you're getting better compared to Johnny or Helen, okay? Adulthood is really important. It's the period of life that you can actually have to use those skills for really, really important decisions, marriage, profession-wise, you have really friendships. And the last one is older adults, which is interesting because there are things that we are losing that affects our self-efficacy. For example, power and memory, which is really important. Very crucial for self-efficacy, but what increases is experience. So some things go down, some things go up, and all of this create a different kind of equilibrium when we talk about self-efficacy. All right, take-home points. Generalized self-efficacy is a belief in your ability to achieve success in your achievement context. Beliefs in personal efficacy affects choices, motivation, functioning, facing adversity, and susceptibility to stress and depression. People's beliefs in their efficacy are developed by four main sources of influence: mastery experience, vicarious experience, social persuasion, and affective and physiological states. Four major psychological processes that we covered. And the last one, perception of self-efficacy, undergoes changes throughout the course of the lifespan. And the last one, overcoming adversity. Hang in there, we're going to be done soon. So here we talked about adversity and we covered it through major life events, okay? And major life events, as you can see from the definition, are clearly timed, disrupt routines, and are perceived as personally significant and memorable by those who experience them. Some of them will be stressful, some of them will not be stressful. By stressful, we don't mean positive or negative. Something can be a positive, an event, a major life event can be positive. For example, you get drafted, you go to grad school, you get accepted, you sign a contract to play for your favorite team. That's positive, that's great. However, it can increase stress, right? So something can be positive and stressful. That's what I wanted to make sure I communicate here. And in terms of life domains, we try to research stressful or non-stressful events through work, social relationships, and health. Here, we're going to do it through health because we are athletes, and that's the most important thing for us to cover. We cover the characteristics of major life events. The first 5 have to do with the event, and the last 4 out of 9 have to do with the effect. This is where I want to stay for a little bit, 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll be done. What is a stressful event? So definitions vary. It's something that provokes behavioral and physiological responses with possible negative implications for disease. I want to talk a little bit about these 10 points down there. So concerning diseases, we know that stressful life events are definitely correlated with depression, with anxiety, with cardiovascular disease, with infection diseases, and cancer. Okay. The third one is resilience to stress. So some people will be more resilient, and so not everybody will be affected the same by the same stressful life event. And 2 explanations here really quickly. One is, let's talk about one which is really important for us, and that's why we're talking about it, is if you have capacities such as mental toughness, you can buffer all these negative responses. Either we're talking about behavioral or physiological. Randomness. Well, stressful events may look random, but most of them are not random. So what we can do is not put ourselves in an environment that increase the possibility of a stressful life event and think about it, okay? And also try to increase capacities that will help us. So if you think you're a pessimist, if you're trying to change that, that will affect the randomness, right, of the stressful life events that happen to you. Now, not everybody will get sick by a stressful life event. Actually, what we think is that stressful events do not create disease. They just affect negatively somebody who is already there. So we have an unstable equilibrium of somebody who's really already vulnerable, and then you add a stressful event, and that goes down here, okay? Potency based on type. So which events are the ones that are going to affect you the most? The ones that are going to hit the core values, right? So that's really, it really depends on you. Chronic versus acute. Of course, we usually say that chronic stressful events will have more negative effect on people, okay, which is in general true. Also, we need to think though that an acute event can have chronic side effects. Again, if you are going to rupture your Achilles, yes, acute life stressful event, but the side effects can be chronic. So we have to consider that as well. Multiple events usually affect us more. We don't have a lot of information. More research is needed. I don't want to go into detail here. Sometimes it's more complicated than that. But in general, we say yes, multiple events can have more of an effect on people. Timing is important. Timing is important. So you are an MMA fighter. Okay, losing your first fight would be way different than losing your 25th fight. Okay, so that's important. Also, if you're really young, it may affect you more. So yes, we're all going to lose parents, knock on wood, right? But we're not going to lose them when we're 5 years old. When we lose them if we're 85, that's a stressful life event. It will affect us completely different. Okay, and then we'll have some sex differences so based on gender and sex, for example, men and women perceive differently the stressful events. We know for a fact that women get affected more by stressful events on average. All right, so take home points: overcoming adversity, and mental toughness can buffer the deleterious effects of adversity while in pursuit of goals. The more we understand what adversity is, the better we can prepare for it. The characteristics of major life events are it's fine. We don't have to skip that. Major life events can have positive or negative effects, and stressful life events predict increases in severity and progression of several diseases. Okay, so we're done. So here, Lisa has already put the link in the chat room, which is great. If you can go there, click on it. If you had done the demographics before, you don't have to do them again, just skip them. Don't forget to click I agree under the consent form, and then put your individual link, which is again, the first letter of your first name, the 4 last digits of your cell phone number, and the first letter of your last name. I will give you 8 minutes. If you have any questions, just hit the chat room or anything and we will address them. Thank you. All right. We don't have a lot left, so we can go ahead and finish it up. That's all I got. I'm good, Lisa. Thanks again for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and hopefully we helped some student athletes even a little bit. It's been a journey for sure, and it's hard to believe that it's been 5 months. But here we are.
Yeah. It's hard to say, you know, that we're in the 5th month is crazy. A question for you, Andreas, do you want me to forward the quadratics link to the coaches so that if for some reason somebody bopped off early that they could still complete that portion, or is it really?
I mean, if they did log on and they were like they actually were present, sure, that would be great.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
send that out to a few of the coaches. Go ahead, Tanya.
I just did that with my team because when Andrea said, I'll give you 8 minutes, I heard a bunch of beeps. So most of us got off, which leaves 5 of us remaining. So I got right in the group chat and I was like, hey, everybody catch that link. And then I just shared it. So they're all telling me they're doing it now if they didn't already. Okay. They're not saying who. I just said like it when you do it because they were all on that whole time until the very end. So
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And Andreas, again, I can't thank you from the Cardinal Strong committee that, we so appreciate you taking so much of your time to spend for our athletes. I know doing this remotely is a challenge in itself. I find it personally, the fact that some of the students have reached out to you, a very encouraging component in terms of, maybe it is hitting some of these students at home and opening up a door and giving them another resource, whether they've utilized a lot of what's said, but for them to actually reach out to you. And I think that's phenomenal. So again, I can't thank you enough. I know it's a lot of time and effort that's gone onto it. Tanya, I know we've talked about it a lot over the course of the months of, just how grateful we are for you taking the time. And, during this time for our students, it's so crucial to have those resources. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Truly, thank you so much. And be safe.
Yes.
Back. Please.
Safe. We hope to see you in Texas.
Yeah.
On the ground. Safe travels.
Thanks, Andres. Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.